My mother-in-law loved Grant Wood. She had a whole wall dedicated to his art in her kitchen. One piece that always caught my eye was a small decoupage lapel pin of Daughters of Revolution she had perched atop one of her frames. It was extra funny because it had googly eyes glued to it. I've long thought that Grant Wood would make a fascinating DAR program, and the seeds for this program started sprouting last June when I attended a fountain rededication in Cedar Rapids. I'd chosen American Revolution Retrospective as our chapter's programming theme, so I needed to tie Grant Wood to the Revolutionary War in order to be able to give a program about him this year. I dusted off a book that had sat on a shelf for many years. In it, the author wrote that Wood had an ancestor who had worked alongside George Washington. Aha, a starting point. The pieces of the program clicked into place surprisingly easily, and my January program went well. Since then, I've learned even more that I am so excited to share with you. Like that pin's googly eyes, this program will zig and zag a bit, but I believe it will all tie together in the end. And so, without any further ado, Grant Wood, George Washington, and the American Revolution. Welcome to another program of Lawrence Van Hook's Revolutionary Retrospective. I'm Amy Sunleaf, the chapter regent. This was the fountain that was rededicated. While waiting for the ceremony to start, I stood chatting with one of the Hodars, or husbands of a DAR. He told me a little about the venue. The nearby History Center had been a funeral home and features a stained glass window made by Grant Wood. There was also a nearby carriage house. But this is actually where the story ends. So let's turn back the pages of time to 1926. In December of that year, Grant Wood applied to design the stained glass window for the new Veterans Memorial Building in Cedar Rapids. He was still a relatively unknown artist at that time and was awarded $9,000 to fund the materials, research, and his commission. Here he is at the Quaker Oats Recreation Building, the only place tall enough for him to work on his 20 by 24-foot paper pattern called a cartoon in the stained glass world. The Emil Frey Art Glass Company of St. Louis, Missouri was awarded the bid to make the window. However, due to its intricate detail, it was recommended that production be shifted to their Munich, Germany facility. Wood was a perfectionist and spent 3 months in Germany to supervise the final stages of the production of the delicate pieces of mouth-blown glass. While there, he visited museums and art galleries and became intrigued by late Gothic and Northern Renaissance style paintings. He became inspired by what he called storytelling pictures. This prompted him to reevaluate continuing to paint in the French Impressionism style that you see in his 1928 painting, Red and Yellow House in Munich. These are the stained glass projects Wood completed in the decade before he applied to make the window. The slag glass lampshade and the window in the former Turner Mortuary are beautiful, but they are quite a contrast to his memorial window. You have to see this window in person to get a sense of its scale and true beauty. It contains 58 window panels and almost 10,000 pieces of glass. Wood filled a sketchbook with his ideas for the Veterans Memorial window. Before he settled on that very classically robed Grecian-style Lady of Peace as the central figure, Wood sketched out many designs. His sister Nan served as the model, posing for hours. Nan's scrapbooks and Grant's sketchbook are owned by the Figge Art Museum in Davenport. They have been digitized by the University of Iowa and are available to view online. Here is the progression of the window from its beginnings in that sketchbook to what he showed the Memorial Commission to the final product. And here are his sketches of the Revolutionary War soldier. I thought you might enjoy seeing them. Wood served as a private in World War I and knew that privates serve as the backbone of military operations, yet receive few accolades. This part of the window was his expression of gratitude to his fellow veterans. All of the men are Army, except the naval cannoneer representing the War of 1812. The Veterans Memorial Building is huge. Its first floor has a large coliseum and two small galleries. In one, the original cartoons of two of the privates are on display, as is a small model. The Veterans Memorial Building is on Mays Island in the middle of the Cedar River. When it was built, Cedar Rapids was only the second city in the world to base their center of government on an island. The other? Paris, France. In 2008, Cedar Rapids experienced terrible summer storms. On June 13th, the Cedar River flooded and crested to its highest level in Cedar Rapids history at just over 31 feet. The flooding was devastating, and the Veterans Memorial Building was surrounded by water. Even though the river didn't actually reach the stained glass, trapped moisture combined with hot summer temps caused the lead fittings to break down. More than 100 cracks developed. In 2009, a Davenport company called Glass Heritage expertly restored the window and added protective exterior frames, ensuring it would last for another 100 years. That claim would soon be put to a test. On August 10th, 2020, a derecho blew through Cedar Rapids, causing widespread damage. Over 720,000 trees were destroyed. The 2021-2022 Iowa CAR state project was Relief Cedar Rapids, and our state conference was held at the Veterans Memorial Building. Here we are standing in front of the window. You can get a better sense of its scale when you see people standing in front of it. Note also that the window was undamaged by the derecho. And I'd like to draw your attention now to the red-edged border around the outside of the window. The window's arch carries special significance to veterans. Starting at the bottom left, up to the keystone, are the emblems and insignia of the United States Navy. From the middle down to the Red Cross are symbols of the United States Army, and the insignia of the United States Marines continues down the right side. As beautiful and awe-inspiring as it is, in 1928, the window sparked controversy. The local DAR and American Legion felt that Wood should have used American artisans, as anti-German sentiment was still high in the 1920s. The Veterans Memorial Building opened to little fanfare on March 9th, 1929. Grant Wood was hurt. He was a veteran and a member of the American Legion. He'd poured his heart and soul into the window. He ended up spending all $9,000 on the window and didn't even make a commission, and he knew it was a priceless piece of art that was going unrecognized. In the meantime, Wood kept working on other projects, including a little piece he called American Gothic. You may have heard of it. In 1930, he became known around the world. Even so, the window remained undedicated due to those lingering concerns about where it was manufactured. Wood's paintings took up more of his time, and he stopped pressing about when a dedication might occur. And then the calendar switched to 1932. 1932 was the bicentennial of George Washington's birth, and activities and dedications were everywhere. Wood was angry when he saw the DAR plant a bicentennial tree and dedicate it with a DAR marker that likely resembled this one, right across from the Veterans Memorial Building. His resentment got the better of him, and he began sketching. This was the result. With the exception of the hand holding the teacup, each of the ladies Wood painted were composites of several women, as he realized the painting would be controversial. Grant Wood publicly called Daughters of Revolution a satire. His intention was to show the hypocrisy of people and their false appearances. Here's a fun fact. One way Wood proved the authenticity of his works was to take a selfie of himself standing next to his in-progress painting. Daughters of Revolution debuted in Cedar Rapids Little Gallery in fall of 1932. One DAR member angrily wrote to the Cedar Rapids Gazette. She claimed she was speaking on behalf of all of her friends and demanded that hideous monstrosity be removed from the exhibit. Little did they know that it would soon be seen on a bigger stage when it was packed up and shipped to Chicago for the 1933 World's Fair. News of the controversy between Wood and the DAR spread across the nation and world, and almost 6 million people flocked to the Art Institute of Chicago to see it. Its reproduction postcards outsold all of the other works of art on display. And we're talking Whistler, Renoir, Rembrandt, and Cezanne, to name just a few. Let's look at some of the fun details of the painting. The Cincinnati Art Museum's website says that the women are attending the annual DART celebrating George Washington's birthday. A sly dig. The blue willow pattern was inspired by the exotic appeal of Chinese porcelain imported during the 18th century. Not American. And what do you suppose Wood thought was in that teacup? East India Company tea, perhaps? The Wood family actually owned and collected blue willow china. Could it have been made by the English Woodsware Company? Grant Wood loved wordplay and inside jokes. Nan inked a few more details on this 1934 newspaper picture. Their mother Hattie's pearl earrings, from the Far East perhaps? One of Hattie's old dresses. Both the lace and the brooch on the woman in blue came from Europe. They were gifts Wood brought home to his mother when he returned from working on that stained glass window. The faded picture in the background should look familiar. Washington crossing the Delaware is, of course, very famous. Wood knew that Emanuel Lutze was a German born painter who had painted this work in Dusseldorf, Germany, using German models and the Rhine River as a stand in for the Delaware River. In 1931, the Cedar Rapids Gazette ran an article about a dust up between the DAR and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. As the buildup to the bicentennial of George Washington's birth was in full swing, the DAR discovered this painting of Washington rolled up in the basement in storage at the Met. DAR members from across the nation expressed their indignance and insisted the artwork be displayed prominently or suggested it be removed and placed somewhere where it would be on display at all times. The irony of this was obviously not lost on Wood. I find adolescence to be a nice companion to Daughters of Revolution. Why, you might ask? Each painting has three main characters in the forefront. Look at the middle woman's bony hand. And now look at the chicken feet. Notice how Wood painted the ladies with tightened lips, beaky noses, beady eyes, and thick, elongated necks. And now look at the hens on either side of the rooster. Another name for puffed up hens is old biddies. Are you thinking what I'm thinking he meant by this? It has alternatively been suggested that Wood was giving a nod to some of the founding fathers in his painting. In Nan's book, My Brother, Grant Wood, she remembered that while the painting stirred up protests in DAR circles, Iowa daughters really weren't that bothered by it. She wrote about a slideshow at a DAR state meeting where the image of the painting was projected on the screen, and it drew so much applause that they brought it back twice. The younger members were especially tickled by it. And even today, you can find note cards with the painting on it at our juniors table. Now remember, after that trip to Germany, Wood began painting the people and things he knew and loved the most. Many of his paintings show American rural life as he thought that's where real patriotism was found. During the Great Depression, Wood's intention was to remind people of the historic times of the past and of the greatness of the United States. And he was very interested in highlighting stories he'd enjoyed as a youth, one of which was the 1863 poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, which he translated into the painting Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. In 1939, Wood painted Parson Weems' fable, saying, "I sincerely hope that this painting will reawaken interest in the cherry tree and other bits of American folklore that are too good to lose." Incidentally, this painting coincided with the 150th anniversary of George Washington's inauguration and was unveiled at the 1939 New York World's Fair. Take a moment to consider, would either of these works have been painted if Wood had not gone to Germany? But back to the window. It was supposed to be a tourist draw, but many people, even some who lived in Cedar Rapids, didn't know about it because it had never received the press a dedication would have brought. The window was finally dedicated in 1955, 13 years after Wood's death. Between the time the window was completed and the dedication, two more wars had been fought. In 2010, after the window was fixed, cleaned, and reinstalled, it was rededicated. Neither dedication was conducted by the DAR. Now, Wood never really intended the DAR to dedicate the window. The Memorial Building Commission was one option, and Cedar Rapids City offices and Chamber of Commerce were both housed in the building at that time, and he figured one of them would hold the dedication. He'd even sketched out some ideas for what he thought the etching should look like, as he thought the dedication would be etched right into that stone base. As you've been listening, have you also been trying to figure out which DAR chapter started the ruckus? I did too. So I did some calculating. In 1928 and 1929, five chapters would have been located either within the city limits or in a 30-mile radius from Cedar Rapids: Ashley, Balliet, Francis Shaw, Marion Lynn, and Pilgrim. Nathaniel Fellows and Mayflower didn't organize until the 1930s. Only one fits all the criteria: Ashley chapter. Ashley chapter had a lovely display of artifacts during that fountain rededication in the same room as that first stained glass window. In fact, you can see its reflection in the framed charter. And thanks to the marker database on the national website, I was able to verify that Ashley chapter ladies did indeed dedicate an elm in 1932, though today neither the tree nor the marker remain. And Ashley chapter still celebrates Washington's birthday with a February tea. This is the carriage house near the fountain. It is known as Five Turner Alley, and it's where Wood lived and created American Gothic, Daughters of Revolution, Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, and many other paintings. Just a day or so before my January program, I was looking through one of Nan's scrapbooks and found this. It's more controversy about the painting. This time, the San Francisco SAR was angry after movie star Edward G. Robinson bought the original painting in the late 1930s, and they demanded he withdraw it from any further public exhibition. And then my jaw dropped. Looking down the page, I found that Nan and Gran's Aunt Sally, more formally known as Sarah Wood, was a member of DAR, Anna Mose's Francis Shaw chapter to be precise. And being a typical DAR aunt, Sally even went so far as to attach her information to a blank application which she gave to Nan. But the ancestor she went in under was not named. Who was he? Needing to know more, I tried looking her up on the GRS. Nothing. I logged into e-membership. Nothing. I looked her up on Family Search. Dead end. I had very little information to share with my chapter at our meeting, but now I have some really astounding additional information to share. And I did finally find Sally in the DAR database after realizing she was born in Virginia rather than Iowa. Sarah Wood's third great-grandfather, Levi Hollingsworth, served as a quartermaster sergeant in the Philadelphia 1st Troop. During the Revolutionary War, the 1st Troop fought alongside General Washington in all the major battles. They served as General Washington's personal bodyguards. Consider this. In Lutz's painting, men on horses are behind Washington's boat. Could this have been 1st Troopers? Talk about irony. When I Googled his name, I found that Hollingsworth had corresponded with George Washington, and their letters are part of the National Archives. Now, I found all of this out shortly after our January meeting, so I added it to our February chapter newsletter. And then a couple of weeks before I gave this program to the Iowa Officers Club, I went back to those scrapbooks and really pored over them, not wanting to miss anything. And I found these family trees and other notes. Frank Weaver, Wood's uncle on his mother's side, was a member of Sons of the American Revolution. And Sally applied for a supplemental. It was approved on May 20th, 1925. This time, her patriot's name was starred and in ink: Captain Abraham Shepard, her great-grandfather. This plaque is for Thomas Shepard, Sally's second great-grandfather, and the father of Abraham and four other sons. The Shepards are believed to be the sole incidents of five brothers serving in the Revolutionary War. Feeling compelled to learn more, I continued down the rabbit hole. A Google search told me that Thomas founded Shepherdstown, Virginia, which is now in West Virginia, and it's located along the Potomac River. He willed it to Abraham when he died in 1776. Now, you might know that Congress approved President Washington to select the location for the new capital somewhere along an 80-mile stretch of the Potomac River. But you likely do not know that Washington reportedly considered Shepherdstown as a possible site for our nation's capital. And Abraham Shepherd and George Washington corresponded. Their letters are accessible in the Library of Congress. And I also finally figured out the Weaver connection. Wood's second great grandfather was Lodowick Weaver. So now we know that at least two of Wood's great grandfathers corresponded with George Washington, and at least three fought in the American Revolution. Iowa has 99 Freedom Rocks that salute veterans and show unique patriotic themes significant to each county. Grant Wood is prominently featured on front of the Jones County Freedom Rock, paying tribute to him and his World War I job designing uniforms, painting camouflage scenes, and camouflaging equipment, skills he used in his art that we have seen tonight. I hope that 21st century DAR members can agree that Grant Wood truly embraced historic preservation, education, and patriotism throughout his life and career. And I wonder if he is getting the last laugh, knowing that the elm tree that Ashley Chapter planted in 1932 is long gone, while his family tree with deep roots in America are being appreciated by all of us listening to this program. And isn't it a fun twist that the Hodar I talked to back in June is the father of our state regent and the husband of one of our past state regents? Here he is taking a picture of Ashley chapter members gathered around that fountain. Grant Wood's connections to the American Revolution, George Washington, and the DAR are so much deeper and interesting than I ever imagined they would be when I started to research this program. These are the books that I used for material for this program. Please check them out if you'd like to learn more. Thank you for joining me for another of Lawrence Van Hook's American Revolution retrospective programs. Check back often as we will continue to add more.